Hello everyone, it's Kara and I am back with the third video in my Christmas card series, and today we're going to be embossing again. I'm kind of on an embossing kick, and to be completely honest, this is an unplanned card video because I didn't even think about this particular card when I was kind of sketching out my ideas, but when I used the vellum on my snowflake card for sentiments, I started thinking about how I could use the vellum for some easy backgrounds because, quite honestly, I have a large pack of vellum paper that I've never used, and I've been trying to use supplies that I have. And so I pulled out some of the vellum paper and I cut it down to that size that I like, which is basically 5 1/4 by 4 inches. And then I also pulled out a few of my large kind of background stamps that I've had for a long time. This is one that has some musical notes. This has kind of a foliage berry type look. And then this has some Christmas sentiments on it. I also pulled out 3 different kinds of embossing powder to try. I pulled out Gold Detail by Stampendous. I pulled out a white by Zig, and I pulled out that Sparkling Snow, which they are calling an embossing glitter, by Wow. I also pulled out my EK Success powder tool, which I typically use when I'm embossing. Basically, you use this little brush top and you brush all over the paper where you want to emboss, and that helps to relieve or reduce the static cling that the paper has, which means that hopefully when you put down your embossing powder, it's going to stick more to the stamped image than the surrounding paper, making that embossed image a little bit cleaner and crisper looking. Now, if you're interested in this tool, it's been around for a long time. I've had mine for years. It is refillable. You can take this end off. I've literally never had to refill mine. It's still about this full. It lays down just a little bit of powder, but I will say a couple things should you be interested in it. The first is that it does have a little bit of a fragrance to the powder. So if you are sensitive to those kind of things or you have allergies, you might want to be aware of that. And also, when you use this on dark cardstock, you can see the powder. And most of the time you can get most of it to kind of brush away, but you might have a little bit of residue if you're not careful. So that being said, I think the only other thing I'm going to be pulling out is my heat tool when we're ready to emboss. So I thought I would show you what I did to the vellum paper, and then I'm going to show you the cards that I created. So let me start by just rubbing this down so I can get a little bit of a powder on here. And obviously, because of the color of the vellum, you're really not going to see the powder. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and use this particular image, the stamp, excuse me, because I think it's just the easiest for you guys to really see. Now, normally when I stamp or emboss, I am having the paper down on the surface and I'm stamping onto it. But because this is so big, I'm actually going to lay the paper on top, okay? And you'll see what I mean. This just seemed to work a little bit better for me when I was doing it. So I'm going to make sure that I have all of the surface of the stamp covered really well with my Versamark ink, which is what I like to use for embossing. And then I'm going to take it, flip it over so that the powdered side is facing down. And I'm going to just try and lay it on top of that stamped image. And I'm going to hold it in place, making sure it doesn't shimmy, and then I'm going to just very lightly press it down. As you can see, the image is transferring to the paper. All right, and I'm going to make sure that I've kind of rubbed all over the stamp to make sure that it's really transferred. And then I will peel it up. Okay, and hopefully you can kind of lightly see that image there. Let me move this to the side. Now, normally when I embossed in the past, I had coffee filters or something like that that I would use, and I cannot for the life of me figure out where I put them. So I'm just using a piece of copy paper that I folded, and I'm going to hold this here. And I'm actually going to do this, I think, in the gold, just because it's such a pretty color when it embosses. Now, normally I make a huge mess when I emboss, and I'm hoping to avoid that, but you just never know. So I'm going to sprinkle it near the top of the stamped image. I like to start that way when I can, especially when I'm doing a large area like this, and then I like to just kind of do this starting from the top and letting gravity kind of help me so that I don't use too much product. And then, well, I try not to disturb the image, you know, smudge it or anything. I'm just moving it around to make sure they get any of the extra. Now the other thing you can do, if you see you have some powder in places you don't want it, you can always use a small little paintbrush to clear some of it up. The nice thing about this particular image is that it doesn't have clear, crisp edges itself. It's got a little bit of a rougher edge on the images. Okay, so that's good enough for what I'm doing. And then I am going to pour this back in here because I always have this fear that I'm going to have this sitting here, or the container of the embossing powder sitting here open when I turn on my heat tool. And I have this fear that I'm going to blow it everywhere. So I like to take care of it before I start using the heating tool. Okay, so it's going to get a little noisy for just a few seconds while I emboss this, but I thought I would show you how I do it. Now with any kind of paper, you're going to want to keep your heat tool a certain distance away, and you're going to want to move it frequently, but you're going to want to be really extra careful with vellum because it's a thinner paper. So my heat gun a lot of the time may be off camera. That's just because I'm kind of keeping it a good distance away. So here we go. Okay, there you go. You can kind of see the image, the gold embossed, really pretty. You can see I have a little bit of an edge that doesn't have the image over here as well. So I'll just trim that down when I go to use it. But hopefully you can see how pretty it is and how quick it was to do it. Now one thing I will mention with vellum, if it gets overheated too much, it has a little tendency to warp a little bit. So if you don't want that look or don't like the way it looks for what you're doing, I would just suggest you put it in, what I do is I put it in a few books, you know, lay some books on top of it when it's in a flat surface, and that pretty much flattens it out. And then what I did with the ones that I created was I used them for those backgrounds on cards. Let me just show you a couple others that I did just so you can see them. I have that same stamped image in the white and in the glittery white. You can see that. I just really love that stamped image. It's really pretty. And then I have a couple in the berry in the white, and then the rest I actually have on cards. So let me show those to you. So here are the cards that I made. They're all very, very similar. Basically, the only thing that's different is the card base color and then the image in the back. So you can see here, there's those musical notes in the gold, super pretty. Now this particular image that you see stamped here is from a Paper Tray Ink stamp set. It's an older stamp set and I don't know if it's still available. It's called, I think, O Tannenbaum. And this is one of those stamped images that you applied by like putting down layers. So first came the, you know, the kind of brown branches, then the green evergreen part, and then the little red berries and stars. And then I of course added the pot and added the star later, and the star is embossed as well. And I just basically did that same image with different backgrounds and some different cardstock. So I did 6 of them so far. You can see I have all of these backgrounds left. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it and make more of this particular image, or if I'm just going to save this for a future card. I haven't decided. But here they all are. Some of them I made that were like this, and some that I made opened at the top. Which one is it? Let's see. Like so. And I will be putting some sort of sentiment in here. So that's the basic idea behind these cards. Again, with the vellum, I do want to mention if it starts to kind of curl up a little bit or rise up a little bit and you don't like it, like can you kind of see right there? You can flatten them out with some books and it typically lays down. But I don't mind that kind of roughly edge. I kind of think it adds some charm to the homemade card. But anyway, those are the basics. If you have any questions, please put them down below. And as always, I hope you're having a wonderful day and a happy holiday season. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, guys.